The web has been the most transformative invention of our time.
I use the web to stay connected with my family
and keep up with the news in my field.
I usually use the web to search for information.
Who invented the World Wide Web?
I can Google it for you.
Internet.
It says Tim Berners-Lee.
Is it Tim Berners-Lee?
No, I haven't.
Well, I'm very happy that I'm not a household name. I think that must be really horrible. But, before the web, computers could not communicate with each other. Imagine if you've got power plugs. Every power plug is different. You say, I am going to...
I don't think I can describe how Tim's mind works. Tim is the most out-of-the-box thinker that I've come across, and I've come across quite a lot of out-of-the-box thinkers.
What are all the things which are recursively transitive closure of used by things which are used by anything which I'm relying on?
He set out to build a platform that would enable people to share every single piece of information in the world.
I don't think anybody thought it was crazy. You have to understand something before you can say it's crazy.
We never had time to say, I bet the thing's going to take over the planet. It just didn't happen.
The web became available. All of a sudden, it was easy to get information.
He got all of the intellectual property and make it available freely to the world.
Suddenly, there is an avalanche of content.
Net neutrality faces a historic change.
50,000 websites are inaccessible.
We're threatened to end the internet as we know it.
If we spend a certain amount of time using the internet, we have to spend a little proportion of that time defending it.
We are all responsible for this technology, and we can all help shape it.
We should think more about our constitutional right to be able to wander around the web. The web is our new world. We need to be able to go wherever we want.
Good afternoon, everybody, or as those who are learning to code might say, hello, world. Welcome to the Science Museum in London. I think before we get started, I'd like you all to make loads of noise to celebrate the 30th birthday of the World Wide Web. I'd like to hear lots of cheering and lots of applause to say a happy 30th to the web. Hooray! I think we're going to have some fun this evening. That was pretty good, but I'm just getting you started, so I'm sure you're going to be making a lot more noise throughout the night with our amazing lineup of speakers. So my name is Tilly Blythe. I'm Head of Collections and Principal Curator here at the Science Museum in London, and I've had the great pleasure of working with Sir Tim Berners-Lee for over a decade. He's been a great friend to the Science Museum. He helped me to bring to life our Information Age gallery, which opened by the Queen a couple of years ago with her very first tweet. You might remember it. And thanks to the generosity of CERN in Geneva, one of the star objects on display in this gallery is the next computer used by Sir Tim to design the World Wide Web. In 1989, Sir Tim came up with the concept of the World Wide Web. He wrote a report which his boss, Mike Sendall, described as vague but exciting. And of course, the rest is history. Little did he know what was going to come. By 1990, the machine hosted the world's very first web page, and it was the server for the World Wide Web. And this little piece of history is sitting right here, just next to me on stage. It was the starting point for a means of communication that is nothing short of a revolution. So we're here in the Science Museum at this amazing moment in the history of the web, with more than half of the world's population online, and with a few thousand of them watching online right now. Later on in the evening, you're all going to hear from the man himself, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, about how he wants you, yes, that's all of you, to fight for the web. But before then, let me introduce our host. She's one of the most well-known faces on British television as Countdown's mathematics superstar. She's an ambassador for promoting maths and science, and she's been involved in multiple initiatives to promote numeracy for children. All of this makes her the perfect host for you this evening. Please give a warm welcome to Rachel Riley.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Tilly. Good evening and welcome to the Science Museum in London, where 2,000 people are gathered for an incredibly special birthday celebration. Yeah, that's right. We're here to mark 30 years of the World Wide Web. And we are joined in the museum by a packed live audience, but that is not all, as we're also streaming live to thousands of people across the world on YouTube. So ladies and gentlemen, here in the flesh, let's say a big hello to everyone joining us around the world. That was pretty average. London, I think we can do better, can't we? Everyone in the room, we've got 2,000 people on the ground floor, on the balcony, on the second balcony. Let's say a proper London hello to the world. On three. 1, 2, 3. That is more like it. This is a birthday celebration. Now, today is a very special date in the calendar for the history of not just technology, not just science, but for humanity itself. March the 12th, 1989 was the day that Tim Berners-Lee created a network that brought us closer together than at any other time in the history of the human race. And if you're wondering what that old thing over there is, well, that is the Next computer, which actually lives here in the Science Museum, and that is the very machine that Sir Tim used to build the World Wide Web when they were both in CERN in Switzerland in 1989. It's incredibly exciting to be part of this huge celebration, of which the Science Museum is just one component, as this is in fact part of an international whistle-stop tour. Just a few hours ago, Sir Tim was at CERN in Switzerland to kick off the celebrations. Then he hot-footed it over the channel to arrive here in the UK this afternoon, and very soon he'll be flying off to Lagos in Nigeria to finish his journey. So there's absolutely no complaining about the traffic in London that you had to contend with to get here when Sir Tim's around, please. But before he does jet off again, Sir Tim, the inventor of the World Wide Web, will be joining us here at the Science Museum to discuss the state of the web and the ongoing work of the World Wide Web Foundation, an organisation set up with co-founder Rosemary Leith to campaign for a more open, diverse and safer web. We'll also be joined by a fantastic lineup of speakers who'll be sharing their thoughts on the future of the web, including STEMet's founder, Dr. Anne-Marie Imafidon, MBE, Google's Matt Britton, Taylor Wilson and Roya Mahboob. But first, it's an incredible, pioneering and Grammy award-winning singer, songwriter and producer, Imogen Heap. She's not just a brilliant artist, but also a true innovator, and her embracing of technological tools to elevate her music make her the perfect opening speaker to get the evening underway. Before we welcome her to the stage, let's take a look at a short film with some very lovely music. I hope you're intrigued. To talk to us about utilising the power of the web to bring artists together, please welcome to the stage Imogen Heap.
Hello, everyone. Where are we? In the Science Museum. What the hell is going on? We're celebrating 30 years of the web with Sir Tim Berners-Lee. Very exciting. And I'm very honoured to be sharing the stage with this man, because I truly credit the success that I've had in music to the relationships I've had with my fans and the collaborations I've enjoyed with my fans over the years. I suppose it really began about 18 years ago. I just kind of departed from the music industry record world, and I remortgaged my flat to bring some money in so I could start my own career on my own terms. And there I was in my studio making some music, feeling quite isolated actually, because I didn't have an A&R man to tell me that they wanted more cowbell in my music or whatever they do. And so it was actually my webmaster at the time who looked after my website, because that was my home. That was my digital home for all of my work, where my fans would go. There was nowhere else to go. There was no MySpace, there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter. That was my home. So I actually discovered that with my fans, when I was having trouble in the studio, I would write to them. I would say, oh, I really don't know what to do with this song, and I would send them 3 different versions of a chorus to see which one they liked more. So I actually invited them into the recording process, and I found this sense of confidence that I got from actually sharing that writing process, that recording process, which gave me the ability to reach in and write a bit of that song that I played to you, which is called Hide and Seek, which most of my my work, my income has actually come from this song. And that was because they were there supporting me. I felt this real, this love and this relationship that we had. It was a very, it felt like a home. It felt like I had a home that I could go to. And this was my introduction, I suppose, to my fan base, other than meeting them after shows. So then what happened was then, we started to collaborate. We started to make albums together. We would write songs together. We made a film together called Love the Earth, nature movie, and with some orchestral music behind it. They would do photography. We'd meet up and listen to albums together. And it was, and it still is, a very fruitful relationship I have. But I find it harder and harder over the years to really know where my center is, because I'm now on Facebook, I'm now on Twitter, I'm now on YouTube, I'm on Google. I have this dispersion. I feel very fragmented as an individual, and it makes me unsettled sometimes in my working space. And at the same time, I grew up in an era where I released 2 records only in physical form in the 90s and early 200s, and then when digital distribution happened, there was this separation from myself and my work that I felt quite impactful. Because what I would do is I'd finish a record and I'd spend a really long time making sure that I put all of the acknowledgements in the CD, that I would make sure all of the writers and the producer, the engineers, all the people that make up an album, the people who did the front cover, sometimes they were fans, who the publishers were, all this, who the musicians were. There's so much support and community behind the making of one song, but yet when we listen to a song online, we really only see that one person on the front cover, and we often, sometimes that information gets disconnected from the song itself. So that means that all of these people that help support my work don't get acknowledgement and can't really further their career as much as I can. And so this is quite unfair. And so what we have in the olden days is we had, physical recordings, and they went on the radio, and then people would collect data from the radio and send that information back to the publishers, and then they would give money and blah, blah, blah. Now we have digital distribution, and we have fragmented data all over the place, 300 different collection societies with different databases around the songs. And so the reality is that 50% of those royalties don't meet the intended parties. And the problem with that is that there's no way for us as individuals to be able to police our own industry, our own ecosystem, by reaching in and trying to solve the missing gaps so that those people can be paid. And so what it's all kind of amounted to for me over the last, 18 years is this feeling of I want to belong somewhere. I want to have an identity, that I do have a physical identity. Here I am, I'm the only one on the planet as far as I know. I would like to have more of me. Maybe I will have an AI version of me soon. But at the moment, I don't have a digital space which I can truly call my own, where the data that I share with the world is used on my terms, and that if somebody might be using data that I have given out unwittingly, perhaps, somebody else might be monetizing that. So we're looking at ways in the music space to create what we call the creative passport, so that music makers can have a place to share their skills, their passions, their works, can connect to each other, can communicate with each other, and can have a place that's verified and true and correct, and can reach into data sets to author correct data about themselves to help the songs be discovered. And on top of that, to augment data into the songs. So you might want to add data into a song like where it was written, or maybe the specific cafe, or maybe the specific coffee that you were drinking when you made that song. And this could also, in turn, bring, oddly, income from perhaps a coffee company that discovers, Imogen Heap likes using this coffee. Maybe we can collaborate with Imogen. She can make some music for our next coffee thing. Because we have innovation in the music industry around the songs, but only really where the music companies are benefiting from that. So we have record labels and publishers and collection societies. And the innovation is the streaming services, the way that the music reaches the people. But we don't have a way to kind of, that's like the 10% of income from myself is from streaming services. But how can we invite innovation around the 90% of the income that I might receive? And this is surrounding my skill sets, this is surrounding my passions, this is the press that I've got over the years. Oh, Imogen's into technology, she's into blockchain, she's into AI, she develops gestural music making gloves, she's a producer, she's won a Grammy. All these things that invite new jobs for me that I have the benefit from being in the press. But this is what we want to kind of bring into the space for everyone, but with our music makers, because it's a good place for us to try stuff out, is by sharing what we've done, we can be discoverable. So actually your uniqueness is what brings you the jobs, rather than you saying, oh, my music is electronic. You go into a huge electronic playlist, and maybe if you're lucky, you might get discovered. And so as a result, musicians have to advertise a lot, which costs a lot of money. Now, how can we get rid of advertising? How can we invite this idea of an incentive economy? When you want to hear something, when your body wants to hear something to cheer you up, how can your AI version of yourself in time reach into the data of songs and the data of music makers to bring you what you need to help you discover somebody that you might not know, and to help you bring that relationship together with that music maker, and so in turn kind of bring an awareness and a sharing of common interests. So really, yeah, that's kind of what we're doing, and I feel like the digital identity, when we can have a place that we can call our own, that we can call home, just as we do in our physical world, where we wander about, and we don't throw rubbish on the floor, well, 99% of us don't throw rubbish on the floor, and we don't commit crimes. But there are people that out there do, and if we see people do that, we call them out. We call them out, because it's relatively easy to do that, phone up the police. In the music space, we can start to do this by having a home where we can share and communicate and be able to police our own environment, and to bring a beautiful home for music and for people to listen to and for people to get a better livelihood from, because it's not really sustainable at the moment for the music maker unless you've got a huge bit of news about you, or you've got a lot of money in advertising. So AI, discoverability, and accountability, and a kind of an invitation really to help musicians tidy up their own space and to reach out. So yeah, a great honor to be here. Just wanted to share. I feel like the digital identity space is really, and the AI space for the music maker is really what's going to help us reach out and help us develop innovation in our music industry. So I'm going to leave the stage now. Goodbye. Enjoy your evening.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Imogen Heap. Thank you very much. That was a fascinating way to kick off this very special 30th birthday celebration. But starting as we mean to go on, Imogen is one of many inspirational people you'll be seeing on stage this evening. Later, as I've already mentioned, we will be joined by the inventor of the web, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, but you can actually tweet your questions to Sir Tim throughout this evening using the hashtag #Ask30, and later on we'll be putting some of the best ones to Tim and he'll be answering those for us. And if you are just joining us online, we are still live here at the Science Museum in London to celebrate 30 years of the World Wide Web. 3 decades that feel like no time at all and forever all at once. And many of you here in the audience may have never even known a world without the web. But for those of us who were around beforehand, I was 3 when it was invented, the days of snail mail encyclopedias and phone directories feel like a totally distant memory. And now, on to our next special guests. In its 30 years, the web's been used in all sorts of ways to promote a whole assortment of incredible causes, and our next 2 speakers represent a perfect example of how the web can be used to unite and empower. Joining us now are 2 of the leaders of the New Now. The New Now is a not-for-profit organisation consisting of a group of leaders who've come together to tackle some of the world's toughest challenges. 2 of those leaders are here today. Firstly, one of Afghanistan's first ever female tech CEOs, whose Digital Citizen Fund supports digital literacy for women and children. And the second is a remarkable man who 11 years ago, at the age of just 14, became the youngest person ever to achieve nuclear fusion. And he did so in his garage. I don't know what you were doing at 14, but I wasn't performing nuclear fusion in my garage. He's gone on to develop some award-winning technologies, and he's even led research into energy production, materials science, and robotics. Between the 2 of them, their CVs are roughly the size of this science museum, and they're only ever expanding them. Let's find out a little bit more about the work of the New Now. About to go join and follow them on Twitter. To talk to you about how the web will be used to empower the next generation, please welcome Roya Mahboob, who will be followed by Taylor Wilson.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I am Roya Mahboob, originally came from Afghanistan, where I became the first tech female CEO in the country. I'm here as one of the founding members of the New Now, a group of rising global leaders tackling some of the world's toughest challenges. Taylor and I are the 2 of the 9 leaders of this group. Building on our experience, we are working together to accomplish change through collective action. And this is why I'm here today, to make this case for collective action, including everyone in this room and watching the live stream for the web's 30th anniversary. The organization that I created, Digital Citizen Fund, started with one goal: to see that technology is an accessible option for everyone, especially for women in conservative countries. We built the IT classroom and STEAM education opportunities for thousands of the girls in Afghanistan, and we give them access to the web to thousands of the young people in our fragile country, where inclusion and hope for the future is vital to rebuild our communities. For the first time, at the age of 16, I introduced to this magic box computer and the internet, where I discovered a whole new world that I have been excluded from. From that moment, I make the technology to be center of my career. Through the web, I actually find my first investors, who was Italian-American and he lived in New York, and he invested my company in Afghanistan. We never see each other at that time. I started to work with the blockchain, paying my employees across of Afghanistan in Bitcoins. But web is only available to half of the world, and other half that lives in digital darkness. The majority are the women and girls, mostly working in a poor area. Some of you might have heard about Afghan girls' robotic team, the Afghan Dreamers. These girls becoming as a symbol of the courage that inspired thousands of them. From Me Too to the Afghan Dreamers, technology and its benefit have been vital to changing our global conversation about the rights of the girls and women. Today, in Afghanistan, not only do women see themselves as differently, as contributed beyond the home, but because of Afghan Dreamers and the women in tech, the men's view also changed on women's ability in science and many other industries. Deposit all of this advance we see in the world, the gap between rich and poor within the countries and between countries is growing day by day. I'm champion of AI, robotics, blockchain, and many other technologies, exciting new technologies. But we tech entrepreneurs need to check ourselves. We must see the tech we build, the web we want, as enabling society to be stronger. When we created a job and opportunities for human beings, we give them a hope, and all we needed is hope to create a job, and particularly for rising generations. So I ask you, when will we build new technologies to create more jobs or replace jobs? Are we investing in the lifelong needs of the girls and women so that instead of staying poor, they get access to quality of education and opportunities to take part in economics activities, in jobs, and in the leadership? Perhaps we are, but not enough. Companies in tech needs an ethical code so that the technology we build, because it's excited us, enhance our life, doesn't remove possibilities and jobs for more people, but actually create more jobs. People must move forward, and we have an obligation to enable that. There is a strong rule for governments too. It's not easy, but it's simple. We need a rule-based system that keeps companies in check and encouraging them to invest in equipping people in poor countries and rich for the jobs of the future. Building the ethical framework is the work of the government, alongside creating universal access for the web for all the people, rich and poor. And finally, we needed to educate our children from the start of their lives on how to be a good citizen and good digital citizen to participate and contribute. Collective action from the government, companies, and ordinary people is necessary. We can't progress without that. The web is pathway to quality education, healthcare, the ability to learn more, and living, and girls and women entering their economies and changing their society needs all of these conditions to meet. Thank you for listening and for having me here today. Thank you, Tim Berners-Lee, for the gift of the magic box that changed my life and millions of the people. Taylor, over to you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Roya, and thank you for having me today. This is an incredible opportunity to be here for, celebrating one of the truly momentous events in the history of humanity. For those of you who know who I am and know my story, you'll probably understand why the web was so important to what I did. For those that don't know, I built a nuclear reactor when I was 14 years old, and I got into nuclear science when I was 10 years old. Before the web, doing what I did would have been impossible. I grew up in a relatively small town in Arkansas, definitely small compared to London, and 35 years ago, I would have been at the mercy of the information at my fingertips in the local libraries. The invention of the World Wide Web and the democratization of information led to this incredible ability to access, the wealth of human knowledge. And it allowed me to learn about nuclear physics and the structure of the universe and all these weird particles and forces that make up the world around us. And I became fascinated. I realized this is something I wanted to spend my life doing. I felt like I could make a difference with it. And it was enabled by this incredible technology that turns 30 years old today. So that's a really important thing to myself and my story, and I'm honored to be a part of it. When Richard Branson and Virgin United came to me and a few others about this idea of the new now, this idea of a new generation of leaders at the table, engaged in the debate, bringing the voices of a new generation to the table. One of the things I was really passionate about was connectivity and digital rights and the ability for every human being on this planet to have access to the information that enabled what I was able to do. And it's a really exciting time. The UN, the ITU, announced at the end of last year that 50% of the world's population has access to the internet. And that's an incredible thing. I mean, myself and I think many others are fascinated by exponential technologies that can start as an idea and rapidly explode in progress. And the fact that in only 30 years, half the people on this planet have access to this incredible technology is really inspiring, really exciting. But one of the things I'm really passionate about is how do we bring the web to the other 50%? It's an incredible force for good. It's a democratizing force to bring education to folks that would not have had access to that information before. So how do we enable the web to come to the next 50% of the world's population? And how do we address some of the core problems that we faced as this first 50% of the world's population came onto the web? That's why the New Now has partnered with Sir Tim and the Web Foundation to work on this digital contract for the web related to digital rights. How do we ensure that not only everyone has access to this incredible technology, but that it's open and it's free and it's reliable and it's free from some of the things that have, in some ways, sort of co-opted the vision of the web as its original idea. It was this idea that it would be this open, democratic platform for the sharing of ideas, and it's had its problems. So how do we address those problems for the current half of the world's population that has access to the internet? And how do we do it for the next 50%? I'm really excited about the technological ways we do that. I'm excited about this contract. Part of what the New Now is doing, and me and Roya and the rest of this group is doing, is we're sourcing feedback from all over the world. We're listening and finding out what this rising generation wants the people that lead the web to know, lead the development of the web, governments, technology companies, ordinary citizens. How do they engage in the process? And what is it that we need to do to ensure that all these good characteristics of the web are encouraged and the bad are discouraged? So it's a really exciting moment in history. I get to spend my day job looking at the future and looking at new technologies and energy production and manufacturing, and how do we take technologies and science that exists today and apply it to making the world a better place in the future. And it's really exciting to play a part in this next chapter of what I really do think is like one of the coolest things humans have ever invented. It's up there with the invention of the wheel, the invention of the printing press, having the ability to take the mass wealth of knowledge that this species has created to make our lives better, put it in one place that's accessible. That's an exciting thing, and I look forward to where it will take us in the next 30 years. So thank you all for having me.
Thank you again to Roya and Taylor there. I hope you found that as inspirational as I did. But it's not long now until we'll be joined by the inventor of the web himself, Sir Tim Berners-Lee. And don't forget that you can tweet in your questions to Sir Tim using the hashtag #Ask30. And as we stand here tonight in the Energy Hall at the Science Museum, it's quite an honour to be in the presence of such incredible minds and amongst people who refuse to be bystanders in the human story and who are shaping the world as we know it. Which leads me on to our next guest. Has anyone in the room tonight ever heard of a little company called Google? Anyone ever used it? Anyone ever used it in the last day, hour? Anyone actually on it now? Anyone that actually is on it now, if you could just put your phones down for 1 second and pay attention, because our next guest is part of a company that was started in 1998 by 2 Stanford University students, Sergey Brin and Larry Page. It's gone from modest beginnings to a global force that you've all heard of, with over 3.5 billion searches every single day and over 1.2 trillion searches each year. That company is, of course, Google, which has been a key protagonist in the story of the World Wide Web so far. And it's had a huge influence on the way we share, earn, and learn, something demonstrated in this short film.
I got my degree in psychology when I was 33 years old. I always wanted to know how the human mind works, how we make choices, how we make decisions. When I did finish the degree and I started working as a teaching assistant, I found it really hard to combine work with having little children. I felt disappointed in myself, and I just thought, well, what am I going to do with myself now? Because the lack of confidence and not knowing what I wanted to do was holding me back. I saw an ad about Udacity nano degrees, and I saw there was a web developer scholarship that was sponsored by Google. The 6-month-long program with a certificate. It includes guidance on how to turn coding skills into future employment. There was accessibility course they offered, as well as courses relevant to website performance. Then, as I learned a little bit about it, I saw the link between web accessibility and psychology. It was like, oh, I might have found something where I can use my psychology degree that will allow me to earn money, yet be there for my family as well, and it's something that I like. I remember there was a guy who told me, you stress too much, you have to have more fun with code. Break the code, fix the code, this is how we learn. And when he said that, I was like, he's right. The Google scholarship allowed me to develop my digital skills and confidence that I needed. I went out and I presented myself as a web developer. And this led me to eventually getting a job. I work as a web developer at Twin Dots, which is a branding and web development agency. And because of the new things I've learned, I feel like I have finally found something I want to do and that fulfills me. I'm 37 now. I never thought that you can turn your career around even later in life. So it's important for me to never settle, to always keep on learning.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a very warm welcome to President of EMEA Business and Operations for Google, Matt Britton.
Wow, hello everybody. It's great to be here. And obviously what I did was I just did a quick Google search for 1989. And it turns out it's Taylor Swift's 5th studio album. But that wasn't what I was looking for. And fortunately, the first result was from Wikipedia, thanks to Jimmy Wales, who is here somewhere, the founder of Wikipedia. And it told me that 1989 was a massive turning point politically in the world. The Berlin Wall fell, there was Tiananmen Square, elections in South Africa leading to the end of apartheid, so seminal moment in history. But way down in the 6th paragraph on Wikipedia, it said that the first commercial internet service providers were launched. And underneath that, it said, in very small font, the first written proposal for the World Wide Web. Nothing that I've been doing for 20+ years would have been possible without that vague but exciting memo that Tim Berners-Lee wrote. And today, how many people have got a connected device? Just let me know. Raise your hand and say yes. Anybody? Yes? Anybody got 2? 3? 4? You are the lucky ones. And of course, we've got used to these things and we take them for granted. But it's only at the end of last year we reached the point, the 50-50 moment, as Sir Tim calls it, where half the people on the planet are connected for the first time. access to all the world's information, all the people, and the tools that are there. Massive change. I think back to 1989, I'm old enough that I was graduating from university in 1989, and I've spent over 20 years working in jobs that entirely depended on the existence of the World Wide Web. So there's something there about skills and how we learn and how we train. And the first thing we need is access. You've all got access. Some people have got 3 times the amount of access they need. Half the world hasn't yet. Larry and Sergey, as were mentioned, founded Google, and hugely grateful to Tim for his invention. And Google was a way to help find information across the web, organize the world's information, and make it accessible and useful for everyone. And that for everyone is really important to us too. And that's why we built things like Android, open source operating system. Anyone can use it. There's now 24,000 different devices that run Android, which means that one app can be developed for billions of people, and it's massively reduced the cost of smartphones. For those people who don't want or can't afford a fruit-based device, there's an alternative that's highly competitive. That's also why Larry and Sergey launched Project Loon, which is a crazy project to use weather balloons to bring the internet to the most remote places on Earth. It's working really well, and we're doing some of that in Africa right now. And then there's tools. We've all got used to having amazing tools in our pocket. Like one of my favorites is Google Translate. Anybody use Google Translate? Yep. I was just hearing people fall in love using Google Translate. And I looked up just before coming here, how many words a day does Google Translate translate across all the different languages we now have? 100 billion words a day. And there are 3 phrases that in every language are the most common. How are you? Thank you. And I love you. So humanity, there's hope for us yet. But then also, as you saw in that video, skills are important. How do we take these technologies and put them to use for growth and prosperity? So I know from working with many small businesses that those that are online are growing faster, creating jobs, exporting more. They're the engine of the new economy. But we need digital skills to help people to do those things. So just like Susanna there from Cambridge, she learned to be a developer, and she's now an app developer, which is brilliant. But there are lots of skills you need just to grow a business online. So we launched a program 3 or 4 years ago. Yonja and I at Google looked at how can we help. We launched a program trying to train 1 million people in digital skills, website, analytics, grow a business. We thought we might get to 1 million in 3 years. We've now trained nearly 10 million people across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. About half of them are women, which is very different from what you see in science, technology, engineering, and maths. And they're going on to grow businesses and create jobs and exports. Entrepreneurs are alive and empowered fundamentally by Tim Berners-Lee's invention. So it's really something of pride for me to see the World Wide Web Foundation and Tim setting out not just the positive stuff online, but actually challenging all of us to make sure that the web is really for everyone. My hope is that it can be built today by everyone, not just the old white men, but everyone. And seeing people like that becoming developers is really motivating to me, because the more tools are built by everyone, the more they can be enjoyed by everyone. And at Google, we've signed up to the charter, to the contract for the web, which is about all of us, the companies, the governments, and the users behaving in ways that protect the dream of what the web can do for everyone. And at google.org, we funded the Web Foundation in November with $1 million to get behind their mission. And today we're announcing another $1 million to help that mission go bigger so that we can have a web that works for all of us. So if I can just take a moment on behalf of Larry and Sergey, who founded Google, all of us at Google, but also all of the users of the products and services, the businesses that are growing, the apps developers, the content creators on YouTube, all of those people who've benefited from the invention of the World Wide Web 30 years ago, from us to Sir Tim, how are you? Thank you, and we love you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. That was a brilliant talk. Thank you very much for sharing us with us here at the Science Museum. And for everyone here, and for everyone watching at home, don't forget to keep tweeting those questions to Sir Tim. But for now, Our next speaker is someone who I personally am an enormous admirer of. In my work, I'm fortunate enough to meet some very bright people, but our next guest is quite simply a beautiful mind. She's a former child prodigy, and now she's an adult prodigy. She spoke 6 languages by the age of 10. She was the youngest person ever to pass an A-level computing qualification at the age of 11, and she had a master's degree at the age of 20. She's impressive in every sense, but it's her work as the founder and head of STEMETS that for me makes her such an important and inspirational figure. STEMETS is an organisation that works tirelessly to create opportunities for women and minorities in STEM. That's science, technology, engineering and maths. And when you consider that only 14% of the UK STEM workforce are women, then the work that STEMETS carry out is not only inspirational, it's vital. Now, I could go on all night about my admiration for STEMETS, but instead, I'm going to get someone up on stage who's better equipped to talk about the matter, for a conversation about the importance of diversity in the tech industries. But first, let's have a little taster of the work carried out by STEMETS.
I always really loved maths, always really loved tech, always really loved that kind of stuff. I'm the eldest of 5, which meant that I like to make things happen, I like to solve problems. Rather than playing with Barbies, I would take TVs apart or try and build a computer or whatever else it was. It's something that's been a part of me since I was so young that I've really enjoyed, that has given me a really fulfilling career. And why can't more girls be a part of that?
The reason we exist is to inspire girls into science, technology, engineering and maths. The issue, I suppose, with STEM at the moment, and the reason that girls aren't going into it, it's not that there aren't lots of women out there doing it already, because they are, but the problem is that the girls don't see that.
If you're not promoting it and giving those opportunities, how else are they going to know? The opportunities are out there for you to take, and it's just really seizing the opportunities, really.
It's just about taking something you love and being able to do it, because why shouldn't you?
I think it's important because there's definitely a lot of men doing it, and we need to sort of get rid of the barrier between men and women.
You can be anything you want, like it doesn't matter that you're a woman.
We're giving them a confidence foundation for them to explore. You know, it's the first sip, the first try.
Now, please welcome to the stage STEMETS founding mother, Dr. Anne-Marie Imafidon, MBE. Welcome, Dr. Anne-Marie. So tell us, what is STEMETS and what do you do to empower girls in STEM?
So STEMETS is a social enterprise that works across the UK and Ireland, and we're all about inspiring, supporting and encouraging girls and young women from the age of 5 up until 21 into what we call STEM, being science, technology, engineering and maths. Our ethos is that everything we do is free for the girls to attend, it's always fun for them, and there's always food. Which my main kind of criticism of the web is that we've not really been able to download food yet. You can order food.
Yes.
But kind of being able to have that long distance food is one thing that would be key for STEM.
That's a question for Sir Tim in a little bit, I think. How can we get food transported over the web? And if the web is so dominated by men, but obviously it's a key method for communicating with the world, 50% of the world's population isn't men, they aren't male. Is there a danger that communication, whether that's traditional news outlets or social media or whatever, is there a danger that it will become more male skewed as time goes on?
So we're already seeing that. If you look at platforms like Wikipedia, we've got a very small minority of editors on Wikipedia that are women, but also the articles and who they're talking about as a small minority are women. So we're already seeing that skew, but I don't know whether I'd pin that on the web per se. I think it's something we see across society in the stories that have been told before we have the web, and we've had that skew, and we continue to see that on the web. But what's nice is that it's so democratic and it's so open that actually it's empowered so many women to be able to contribute, to write their own content, to share, to create safe spaces online. There's so much capacity actually for women's voices and different types of stories to be told. You know, society still needs to get itself in gear to get to that place, which is partly why I run STEMETS, but there are so many different organisations that work with kind of marginalised groups and underrepresented groups. But it's definitely something that we see even in the interactions that people have on Twitter, where you've got this kind of male skew. which has, in times run women off the web, for example. But it's definitely something that's important we need to make sure we're doing. And also men need to make sure they're also telling those stories and being balanced in what they're contributing online.
Yep, and as we've heard tonight from many speakers, there's a obviously brilliant side to the web, but negative side to the web. My favourite analogy of it is that it's like a knife. The internet's like a knife. So in the wrong hands, it can be incredibly damaging, incredibly dangerous. But in the right hands, in the hands of a surgeon, it can be a cause for good. And of course, the web has played a huge role in the success of STEMettes, whether that's through forging communities online or promoting projects or initiatives. So what have been the positives of the web for STEMettes in terms of promoting equality?
So the positives for us have been so many. I mean, STEMettes wouldn't exist if we didn't have the web, if we didn't have the platform to be able to share the message of what we do, the activities that we actually run, the stories of the women and the girls and the young women. We wouldn't have been able to have that reach if we didn't have the web. So initially, actually, it just started off as an idea that I had towards the end of 2012. Spoke to a couple of people, and that was fine in industry. But then on the kind of the New Year's Day, my kind of New Year's resolution, I published a blog post that was, this is what I want to do, here's the idea, here's what I've been thinking, here's where it's come from. That was then shared across Twitter and lots of different platforms. Google+, if we all remember that as well, rest in peace, Google+. But shared it on so many different platforms, and then actually on the first event, we had more volunteers than I knew what to do with, actually. But I think almost twice as many as we had actual girls that had turned up. And these were people that I had no idea, I didn't know who any of them were.
Yep.
They were all kind of rallying behind this issue, behind this cause, behind this thing that they could do, a tangible action that they could have for positive in the world. And we still see it now. I built my first website. I tweeted about it just now, actually, as part of the Web 30, but built my first website.
What's your handle? Just get the plug in.
At AM There we go. Or at STEMettes. But just tweeted about it, and I built my first website aged about 8 or 9 years old.
Of course you did.
And for me, it was the most fascinating. It was amazing. You could look at web pages and you'd be able to view source, and then you'd be able to see kind of what the HTML tags were behind the page, and you can take that and put, I don't know if anyone else had this, like a digital scrapbook when they were younger, maybe just me.
Got some nodding in the audience.
My dad was definitely much happier that I was taking apart web pages as opposed to the VCR player that we had at home, which I also took apart to understand how that worked. But it's been, it's still something that excites me today, that people can search for girls in STEM, young women, female innovators, and our website shows up. And they can click through and they can find that information without me needing to be there. Or without a member of the team having to kind of hand them the flyer at the right time as they want to learn more information. So, the web has been a fantastic tool for us. And, from the emails that we send to our partners to even receiving partnership payments online, and doing our banking online, there's all these things that we've been able to get from the platform that is the web.
Yeah, and I certainly direct especially women in your direction if they want more information on how they can get more involved in STEM.
Or great food.
So, I mean, you're probably barely 30 years old yourself.
It's a couple months older than me, the web.
There we go. Absolute baby. But you are a doctor, so I am going to ask you, what do you think the biggest achievements of the web are in the past 30 years? Just a small question there.
I saw this. I don't want to talk about the biggest achievements per se. I think my favourite things, or one of my favourite facts about the web actually, is the first image ever to be uploaded, which was a bit of trivia that came out 5 years ago when we celebrated 25 years of the web. But it's fantastic. If you look it up online, it's a parody pop group that was based at CERN called Les Horribles Cernettes. Which, if you think about the web and all the amazing things that we are able to do with it today, it's kind of funny to think the very first image is of these physicists who also sung as a joke, and that's the kind of first image that we have up. So that's one thing I wanted to highlight. I guess I'm most excited about the new things that are coming up on the web. So one of my other favourite things from the web has been we run sessions all the time where we get girls to create technology and build things for the first time. And it's almost like I'm continuously reliving that moment aged 8 or 9 when I made my first web page, when we've got these girls, across the UK, across Ireland, beyond, creating things using the web, whether it's prototyping web apps, whether it's chatbots that they've created. And for me, the thing that I love the most is seeing the excitement in their faces, not just in what they've made, but in the fact that others are able to access it,
Yeah.
also have the connection to the web. So kind of recent examples of what we have built. We did a hackathon a couple of months ago where the girls were building chatbots using IBM Watson. And we said to them, you know, we're just thinking about the relationship between robots and humans. You know, you come up with your own idea of what you'd want to build if you could create a chatbot. One particular group stood up and they had built a chatbot that helped you practice, or it helped coach you through that conversation you have to have with your mum when you don't get a good score on a test at school. And it's fascinating to see the things that these girls come up with. One more just from a couple of months ago. We did some apps, health tech related apps, up in Chorley in the north of England, with a group of kind of local girls. We had about 60 girls there over the weekend. At the end of it, we always have demo days, so they get to present what they've created. 2 6-year-olds stood up and effectively giggled their way through a presentation of a mobile app that they'd built that had strawberries with funny faces and apples with funny faces. And it was the enjoyment that they've derived from that project, from the collaborating, from the teamwork, but then even to be able to present to an audience was something tough, but it united them so much in that creativity. And I think that's something that we have across all the technologies, but the web in particular, with the accessibility that we have to it, allows people to create and feel that sense of ownership over something like the web, which, you know, you can talk about the Twitters and the Facebooks and the Googles, you know, till the cows come home, but it is about, you know, that small interaction and people being able to make things that then is live up to the world.
And STEMET are doing a fantastic job of showcasing that kind of talent from 6-year-old girls and onwards. So thank you very, very much, Dr. Anne-Marie.
Thank you.
Cheers. I can't believe she forgot cat videos. But that's why I'm here, cat videos, what the web was invented for. Anyway, thank you very, very much, Dr. Anne-Marie. And it is not long now. I think that clock is not for us, but it's a very short period until we do welcome to the stage the inventor of the World Wide Web, Sir Tim Berners-Lee. But before so, we have one very special guest to welcome. And before we even welcome him, we have a couple of short messages of congratulations to Sir Tim. Firstly, from Nobel Prize-winning President of the Royal Society, Sir Venki Ramakrishnan. And then from some very chilly-looking web users.
I want to congratulate Tim Berners-Lee on the 30th anniversary of the World Wide Web. I'm also proud to say that he's a fellow of the Royal Society. Who would have thought that a protocol to exchange data and pictures intended for physicists would revolutionize the world so much that I can order food now by the click of a button? Now, the World Wide Web is ubiquitous, and everyone is now sort of consumed by it, but it's also raised some huge problems, both political, social, and ethical, and questions of privacy as well. And so as we face the future, we must understand that this is a powerful tool that has brought us an amazing amount of good, including information at the touch of a button, but also created problems that we need to address.
Happy birthday to the World Wide Web! Thanks to the internet, us down here in Antarctica are able to communicate our science ideas and all our data about climate change, biodiversity and space weather. So thank you, Tim, for the internet.
Short and sweet message there. It doesn't get much more remote than that, and I'd hate to think how long it took them to upload that video. I also wonder if they get better signal in Antarctica than we do here in central London. We will never know. We'll just assume they started sending that message on the 20th anniversary. We return from the icy surroundings of Antarctica to a place a little close to home for our next very special guest. You may have heard of him, especially you Londoners here in the crowd, as I'd be surprised if a day goes by where you don't read something about what he's been up to during your tube journeys home from work each day. He gave a famous keynote speech last year at South by Southwest Festival in Texas about the dangers and opportunities presented by the influence of social media in all of our lives. And he's here 1 year on to look at the progress made since that speech and what needs to happen next. He's as great an institution to our capital city as the Science Museum itself, and I'm sure a lot of you have worked out who it is already. But ladies and gentlemen, please give an enormously warm welcome to the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan.
Thank you, Rachel, for that introduction. Can I ask you, please, to show your appreciation to Rachel, not just for her emceeing, but for everything she's doing to help inspire more young people across the country to get into science, tech, and maths. I'm afraid, though, even Rachel can't solve one of the greatest mathematical puzzles of our time. How Theresa May gets her Brexit deal through Parliament. But seriously, it's fantastic to be here at the world-renowned Science Museum to celebrate a creation that's not only changed the world, but is still doing so. When it was created 3 decades ago, the World Wide Web profoundly altered the course of human history. And we're still seeing the impact every single day, shifting and disrupting the way we do things, how we work, how we educate others and ourselves, how we consume news and process information, and vitally, how we communicate and interact with one another. It's become a truly unique democratic platform and a powerful force for good, allowing voices to be heard which once weren't, making it easier for us to keep in touch with loved ones who we'd otherwise have lost touch with, opening our eyes to oppression and discrimination, which we were blind to before, and enabling new commerce, innovation and opportunities for people to reach their full potential. In our city, London, I've seen firsthand the impact it's had. The web has enabled us to become one of the world's greatest tech hubs, not only boosting our economy, but empowering Londoners from all walks of life, as you've just heard. Not only boosting our economy, but empowering ordinary Londoners to fulfill their potential. To give you just one example, by publishing open data through the London database and Transport for London, we're making it easier for London's institutions to work with the tech sector to help solve some of the most complex urban challenges of our time, from poor air quality and congestion to housing and inequality. I believe the world has only seen the tip of the iceberg in terms of what's possible. And that if we take the right, sensible, and ethical approach going forward, we can utilize the web to shape our societies into a fairer, more inclusive, more prosperous place for us all. I emphasize the if here, because there's no getting around the fact that the rapid growth of the web has also created significant challenges. We've seen a handful of the largest global tech companies amassing an enormous amount of power over how information and personal data is consumed and sold. And in some cases, we've not only seen people become a product to be targeted for profit rather than a client to be served, but platforms hijacked to exacerbate, fuel, and deepen the divisions within our communities, which is polarizing rather than uniting us. So although this is a moment to celebrate the progress the web has brought to us over the last 30 years, we must also use this moment to collectively commit to taking action to resolve the problems holding us back. You know, Mark Zuckerberg famously once said, or as someone may call him, Mark Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg famously once said, "Move fast and break things," a mantra that too many have clearly followed in recent times. Because yes, some things have indeed been broken, and it's now up to all of us to fix them. One of the key changes we must see is greater responsibility taken by some tech companies for the impact they're having on the world. But as I made clear in my speech at the South by Southwest conference a year ago, the onus for change shouldn't just be on tech companies and innovators. It must fall to governments, working with tech businesses, leaders, and the public to ensure that this revolution is not detrimental to our long-term progress. In truth, for far too long, there's been a dereliction of duty on the part of politicians and policymakers to ensure that the rapid growth in technology and the web is utilised and steered in a direction that benefits us all. Over the past year, I'm pleased that we've seen some positive steps, with governments and companies starting to move in the right direction. But there's still a long way to go if we're to ensure that the web always helps and never hinders our aim to create more open, connected, and socially integrated societies. Let me just finish with this. The web started as a tool to link academics, to pool ideas, and to solve problems for the benefit of the world. At its very core, it was about creating something for the greater good of humanity. Despite the major challenges ahead, I remain optimistic about the web's future, optimistic about the positive impact it can have on London and the world, and optimistic that we can do ourselves justice by not straying from the original noble mission. That's why it's such a great honour to be here today for this celebration and to be able to introduce an incredible Londoner. You know, it's not often that you get to introduce someone who's had such a profound impact on the world. And I know I speak on behalf of all Londoners and people across the country when I say how proud we are of his achievements. There is no question that Sir Tim Berners-Lee is one of the greatest, most pioneering minds of the past century. Someone who's amongst a rare few who can be put alongside the likes of Albert Einstein, Marie Curie, and Alan Turing for the influence they've had on the globe. But for me, what makes Sir Tim's story so inspiring and so exceptional is how he put openness at the very core of his invention. The web was always designed for the people rather than any personal gain or wealth, a selfless act for which we all owe a huge debt of gratitude. But one of the things I now admire the most about Sir Tim is not just how honest he's been about some of the problems the web has caused in recent years, but how he's putting himself centre stage in the effort to fix them. As Mayor, I'll continue to support him every step of the way in this endeavour, which includes backing the Web Foundation's new contract for the web. The GLA, the Greater London Authority, will be signing this contract, and I encourage others to do the same. So, without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce one of our greatest Londoners, a legend of our times, the inventor of the World Wide Web, Sir Tim Berners-Lee.
Thank you, Sadiq. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. I gather that the queue is round the corner and up the street. I'm glad that a bunch of you got in. It's pretty special for me to be here. Hey, as Paul Simon said in Central Square, it's good to do a hometown gig. And so for me, this is a hometown gig. In fact, You know, I spent happy days coming to this hall and checking out the steam engines, and in particular making sure, going to see all of the model steam engines with locomotives, and pressing all the buttons and making sure they all worked, and being absolutely disgusted with anything which didn't have a button to press. So it's all about pressing the buttons and making things work. So it's great to be back in this museum. So I got a few minutes to go back over the last 30 years. And I'm not just going to give a history of it. I'm going to give a little bit, a teeny-weeny bit of history, and then mainly talk about some of the issues that we've been, that basically, these used to be issues that we were concerned about in the Web Foundation, but now they're issues that anybody, you walk out to Exhibition Road and ask somebody about the web, and they will give you their own litany of things that they think maybe could be fixed. So there is a lot of work to do. So I'm not going to spend all the time on history. But that said, okay, so this is the slide. Why is this a neat slide? This is because that's March 1989. That's the date on the document. When I wrote that document, that was me eventually having time to actually put down in, and being persuaded that I shouldn't just talk to people over coffee about this. I should actually write down what it would be about. I tend to be a sort of image-oriented person, so circles and arrows went onto the first page. I've used circles and arrows on whiteboards ever since, and some say that in fact the semantic web technology is all circles and arrows again. But the central thing here was that having got this on paper, even though it didn't, I didn't for a while, there was no direct, obvious path at CERN, High Energy Physics Lab, to be able to go start a project to make a global hypertext project. There was, after a bit, Mike Sandel, my boss, in fact, after a year or so, he found an excuse to let me work on it. The vague but exciting writing in pencil was found when Mike died 10 years later. His wife Peggy found his copy of my memo, found that vague but exciting. Thank goodness he hadn't thought exciting but vague, or if not, let me go ahead with it. Lesson, if you have things going on, if people come to you with things that you think are vague and exciting, the classic thing is give them some 10% time. 10% time is good, 120% time is better. So Mike gave me 120% time. So that was, it was a neat time. CERN was a very neat place to be. The key things which actually allowed it to take off in the design were that it was designed to be a universal system. It ran on the next box, it ran on this thing. The excuse Mike gave me was that he allowed me to buy one of these boxes, but just because it was a really neat computer, it still is a really neat computer. This is the computer that Steve Jobs made when he left Apple, when he parted company with wailing and gnashing of teeth from Apple. He made Next Computer Company, and Next Computer Company made the Next Computer, and he put all kinds of really cool things in it. And in particular, they made an app for building apps, an interface builder, which allowed you to create new apps. And in fact, if you build an iPhone app now on the OS 10, you'll find that the app builder, the interface builder you use there, is basically the same thing. It owes its history is that neat tool that they produced back then. That was Mike, and Mike said we should kick the tires on the next computer, so why don't you build you have to pick some paper program to test it with, arbitrary program, whatever you like. Why not that hypertext thing, he said, with a wink in his eye. He had a great twinkle in his eye, Mike. So the rest, as I say, is history. The rest, in fact, to a certain extent, the rest is history that's recorded on the web. When you're Googling stuff before that, it's remarkably, the web is unfortunately kind of much more empty. You have to go to historians and Wikipedia. But there's a lot of history of the things that continued. As it expanded, the key to its expansion was that the design was universal. It had to be universal because I wanted to be able to link to anything. If I could link to anything, that means people could put anything on the web. And that meant that the web had to work on any platform, not just the next machine. I couldn't persuade everybody to get an X machine so that they could use the web. It was really important they should use any hardware, any software, any operating system. They should work from any language. So the universality in the design of the web is really, technically, is the main principle. And that universality of the web being able to put on anything, after a while, started to look as though everything was on it. People, it was amazing, the things which were on it. And there was a certain point, for example, when there were 20% of the world had access to the web, and that's when we started the World Wide Web Foundation. Rosary and I founded a foundation to look at the two issues. One was that at the time that it was amazing that 20% of the world are actually using this web. So that's the responsibility. Is the web, and is it fine? Is it wonderful? And in fact, sometimes it was fine, sometimes it was wonderful, but in some countries you'd find that the rule that, I can link to anything and you can click on that link and go to anything wouldn't work if you were living in certain countries. That was a thing then to a certain extent. It's more of a thing there. So there were issues with the web. There were issues like net neutrality wasn't guaranteed everywhere, and so on. And so keeping the web free and open was really important. Fighting to stop bills for spying and blocking by all kinds of different governments was important. But then meanwhile also, obviously the huge question which was begged by the worrying about the power of the web and what a wonderful web it was going to be for those 20% means every time you make the web more powerful for the 20%, then the digital divide between the power of the 20% and the power of the others gets worse. So this is something I scribbled on the whiteboard. Okay, this is a whiteboard scribble. This is not data. Okay, I would love it if somebody would go get real data for this. Okay, you're all scientists, go for it. Okay, but here, and you can maybe put it together from various from stuff that's out there. But if you imagine, so for this graph, you have to imagine that all the people in the world are arranged in order. And on the left, you have the people who have the least power to use the web. And on the end, you have a person, whoever they are, some scientist who has got fantastic computing power and fantastic 3D computer screens and incredible goggles and an incredible brain to use it all and communicates directly with the browser through thought transference and implanted chips. Okay, so this person, the green person, is the most empowered person. And then as you look at the humanity, you find, in fact, there's very few people who have really powerful computers and great connections and great software. And then you find that a lot of people are at the blue level. Maybe we're a lot of people in the hall at the blue level, and they have quite powerful computers because they're geeky. But in fact, coming down the slope, you find this is where a lot of people are. They've got a laptop, they've got a reasonable connection, they know how to use the web, and it's working for them okay. And then as you go further down, a lot of people have mobile devices. They don't have a laptop. So with people who can't afford a laptop, and they can only just afford connectivity, then there's quite a long skirt on this. So this curve, we've never actually drawn it, but we have a strong feeling it's very concave. It gets steeper at the end. This is, if you like, if you look, you can compare it with a Gini coefficient curve. The gap above the curve represents inequality. The gap above the curve represents the extent to which there's a few who've got a lot of access to it and a lot that don't. And of course, right now, one data point I can give you, and that is that it goes flat, 0 up to 50%. So the number of people who are using the web just this year is now moving from 50% on. So a huge amount of William Gibson quote you might have heard before. It's not, the future is here, but it's unevenly distributed. So wealth is here, but it's unevenly distributed. Access to the internet is free. It's unevenly distributed. It's unevenly distributed, obviously, because of your economic status. Because one of the main principal indicator for being or not being online is the affordability. We had a rule with the Web Foundation that we would like every country to work to the point that you can get 1 gigabyte of data for no more than 2% of your monthly income. 2% of your monthly income, if you live in London, might be what you pay for a Zone 1-2 car, for example. So if you pay to get around London on the tube in Zone 1-2, and you find that's affordable, you're using maybe a typical salary, you're using 2% of your income. That's reasonable. That's a reasonable thing to do. That keeps the system going. Everybody should be able to do that with the internet too. And these red countries are the places where it's not. And also, and it's not just about. It's not just about income. It's well, it may be, whether it's not through income or not. It turns out that men are 25.8. Ignore the 0.8. Around a quarter more likely to have access to the internet than women, and so that means that women, where the internet goes, to a certain extent, it isn't as though there isn't enough discrimination against women in the planet already, as though there aren't enough gender balance, gender discrimination problems out there already. When the web comes, then the men are more likely to use it. Well, they like to have the use of it. They're also more likely to use it aggressively. They're more likely to use it to find a job or something. So one of the things the Web Foundation wants to do as well is to make sure that wherever you go, emphasize women. We're going, actually after this, we're going to grab an overnight flight to Lagos, as you may have heard, as part of the 30-hour journey celebrating the 30 hours of the web. And in Lagos, we're going to see WTech, for example, one of the organizations which is promoting women and women using tech and women using the web and stuff like that. So, and great to hear all the people who talked about that to date. If you're concerned that the web isn't serving humanity, there's all kinds of things you can look at. One is, what language are people speaking? The top level, the top line is, and the spoken word out there, the world at the moment speaks a little green slither of English. Is for those who are colorblind, the green is the left-hand piece, and sort of then the top 10 languages after English get the blue piece, and in the actual real world out there, and the rest are, you can see, about half. But on the internet, very suddenly, whoa. Use of English on the internet at the moment is more than 50%. What's wrong with this picture? Obviously, interesting things could happen. We need to make sure that people are not disenfranchised because they don't speak English. Maybe a lot more people, there are a huge number of people learning English. So it could be that sort of English becomes a new serious new lingua franca, but it also could be that all those Arabic-speaking Chinese people come online and bring a huge amount of information which comes with a different language and a different culture and different assumptions about what is reasonable to do on the web. But also, we need to make sure that we watch what happens there, make sure people aren't disenfranchised, and then in particular, if you're in a country where, so like India or some African countries, where there are lots of dialects, if there are, then we need to make sure that everybody who comes online realizes that the web is for them to be creative, blog. Don't just read, don't just learn English, blog about your own place. So those are some of the things that we're concerned about. We're concerned with all this stuff too, of course. The Web Foundation has been, since it started, we've been concerned about all the various ways in which the web might start off at the beginning of the day of being a wonderful resource for you, and by the end of the day may leave you feeling attacked and horrible if you're a feminist blogger. It's very common that people will lay into just because you're a female, just because you're a blogger, just because you're feminist. But if you're, the combination, for example, so there are many. I won't go through all the different types of harm that there are, and all the obviously there is harm that is created by people being just nasty. And there's also badness. There's fake information which is created very carefully by bad actors who just want you to believe something fake because they want to manipulate you to join a particular community, which will then they will use in an election, or they will use to cause a riot, or you will use to cause genocide. So there's a lot of stuff we need to watch out for. So but we can, in the past, we have watched out for it. The people, have gone out on the streets. We have gone out there. When Super and Pipa were acts which were in danger of being passed in the USA, people took to the streets. You might remember ACTA was an act which was going to be passed in the EU. People went to the streets and protested, and it made a big difference. Members of Parliament suddenly learned a whole lot about the fact that the internet being open and free and the internet access should be competitive was really important, even though the large companies who told them it didn't really matter. So we do need to fix these things. We need to fix these things, and we need to think actively about what sort of web we want. We've had discussions here when we had previous anniversaries. We had a festival at South Bank, for example, to asking what kind of web you want. This is the sort of thing you can ask yourselves, you can ask your parents, and you can ask your kids. Right? This is the sort of thing where sometimes it's obvious, faster, freedom, more, better. But sometimes it's not obvious like when hate speech and free speech, the right to face your attacker face-to-face compared to the right of a whistleblower to be anonymous. Okay, we have both these rights, and people fight for them both, but actually they're incompatible. So this contract for the web is about all getting together to sort out some of these really tricky problems. Actually, there will be time when the contract for the web people will be fighting for freedom. So yes, there will be some of that. There will be time we'll be just pushing for lower prices, more bandwidth, better news, but more responsible people, better democratic discussion and debate sites for holding politicians accountable, having rational debate, and arriving at rational conclusions in a finite amount of time, using the web for that sort of thing. As Sadiq hinted. There will be times when we have to sit down, and it's complicated, and governments and companies, but we need citizens to be there too. We need consumers to be there too. We need people. We need pupils. We need regular people to be there too. So be there, or make sure the organization that can represent you can be there. The contract for the web, so that's the tool that the Web Foundation has provided at this 30-year point. This is the contract for the web is a convening. It's not a contract, it isn't written yet. It's a convening of people who will write it. It's a bunch of principles which are very sort of vague but good and wonderful, easy to subscribe to. Better access, freedom, privacy. But it's a discussion. The contract for the web is a discussion between all these people, and you're welcome to join it if you go to webfoundation.org/fortheweb. If you follow tweets #fortheweb, for example, then you can be a part of it. We have before fought to protect, in lots of cases, there's the URL, and there are some hashtags. Contract for the web the Web Foundation made for everybody to use as a tool to fix these things together, because it's going to be hard. It's going to be more complicated than Freedom for Freedom, but it's really, really important. Thank you.
Start a chat.
Finally, some cat and baby videos. Don't say we don't give the people what they want. So Tim, thank you very much for sharing your story and that important message with us, the audience here at the Science Museum, and to everyone watching around the globe online. It's now time to welcome our last guest to the stage to join Sir Tim in conversation and to put to him some of the brilliant questions that you've been firing at us online. So please put your hands together for an award-winning journalist. She's written extensively for The Guardian and reported for the BBC and Channel 4, to name but a few. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Samira Ahmed.
Can I just say how awful it feels to be coming on after Sir Tim Berners-Lee? But anyway, we have questions that people have sent in on Twitter, but also some questions that we've come up with of our own. And we've got some images, and I want to start by putting up a book. And I think we have an image of it, hopefully coming up. It's a Victorian book called Inquire Within Upon Everything. And there's a copy of it in the National Science and Media Museum in Bradford. And I gather this book helped sow the seed of the World Wide Web. Can you tell me a bit about it and the idea forming in the young you?
So the young me found this on my parents' bookshelf somewhere. It's not a huge book, it's not an encyclopedia. It's a sort of an almanac for daily life. It's one of those books which has got a phrase or helpful tip at the top of every page, at the bottom of every page, and it's got and you can look up things like how to tell the difference between a wasp sting and a bee sting and what to do with each one, and recipes for a few things, but not for everything, and things about etiquette, all kinds of things. So an interesting book, but the title of course, as well. Just inquired the invitation, inquire within upon everything. That stuck. So when I was later, in 1980, when I was writing a program, not the web, like 10 years before the web, but I was already writing programs to keep track of stuff, I called the program Inquire Within.
And it's interesting, the idea of a window and people looking in the analog idea kind of is at the heart of the way the web works for many people. I've got a question from a...
Yes, you shouldn't just inquire, though. You should write stuff, too. Make it a read-write web.
Right. I've got a question I want to bring in at this stage from someone called Lizzie, who asked, what inspired you to study science and maths as a child?
Ooh, well, I'm afraid that's really easy. Mum and Dad, okay, were both mathematicians. They were actually really computer scientists, but computer science wasn't a thing, didn't have a name. They met actually working for the team at Ferranti, which commercialized the Manchester University Mark I computer. And so they were one of the marriages, one of the few marriages that came out of that really sort of hard-working, intense team building one of the first, basically the first British commercial computer, the first computer which was sold to a customer. And Mum could be referred to as the first commercial computer programmer on that strength. And so that they were full of the excitement of the fact that if you had a programmable thing, then it didn't matter what sort of programmable thing it was. It was what you did with it was up to your imagination only. So that was, those were the days of Turing saying that all machines were equivalent, and so it's just what you can program. That was the spirit, I think, of the home in which I grew up.
And you've talked about working at CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, where you came up with the proposal. Again, I think it's always worth having a look at it. We can have a look at that slide, I think, if you can put it up. Can you talk me through a bit more about the original need that you felt you were trying to solve when you came up with the proposal?
I suppose, so by the time I put that together, I'd been working in a number of different places. I was sometimes writing code by myself, but often in teams. And so partly I wanted a system like, I wanted lots of things. I wanted there to be a big book where all of the online documentation, which has actually already been typed into computers and sitting on computers, could be deemed as being part of this big online book. And I wanted a collaborative space too, where if I was trying to solve a problem, and I had some of the pieces of the idea in my head, and actually some of the pieces of the solution were in somebody else's head. Could we, by all using the web, end up getting to know each other's partial ideas and partial solutions? So could we use the web as a way of creatively, constructively, collaboratively, finding solutions to big problems? So that was what I wanted to use it for in the lab. But obviously it had to be universal, so it had to work. People had to be able to use it for whatever they wanted.
I'm interested in the kind of culture in which you were able to come up with it. So, vague but exciting, that famous phrase written on your proposal, kind of sums up in a way how it all felt at the start. You've said in the past that the World Wide Web was all based on there being no central authority that you had to go to ask permission. So how did that shape what was being created and how the web felt to you in those early years?
So the internet, right? People say, thanks for inventing the internet. Actually, bzzz, no. Vince Cerf and Company invented the internet 20 years before. So when I came along, so in 1969, different bands, different global situation, Vince Cerf and Company invented the internet. They design it as a platform. They design the internet so that if you have a computer and you connect to the internet, and somebody else has a computer and they connect to the internet, then you can write a program on one, the programs can communicate with each other, and they don't have to know anything about what happens inside. To a certain extent, the platform was opaque in that you didn't have to worry about what was inside it. It was, to a certain extent, firm in that you didn't have to worry about the thing breaking. It would either work or not. And the thing, it was a flat platform. The internet didn't have an attitude about what you should use it for. They just said any program can connect with any other program, and they can send bits to each other. Okay, that was really, really important. So it was designed physically. It was decentralized. There was no central node. So because there was no central node, there was no place where you could put a tap to turn it off at the time, and that meant there was no place I had to go to. I didn't have to go to where you say, I'm going to make a new protocol. These things are going to be talking World Wide Web. They're going to be talking HTTP. May I introduce HTTP to the central hub? No central hub. Nobody wants permissionless space. The web is supposed to be a permissionless space too. And so that the idea of permissionless space is a really important part of the internet. And we fight to keep it like that.
I mean, sitting looking at the next computer you wrote it on, it's hard for those of us who can't imagine a world without it, of how you were opening up this whole kind of can of, I guess, of worms as much as a positive possibility. Let's look at it positively first, which is what has been the best surprise for you, the best unexpected consequence that's arisen through the World Wide Web? People have asked me that from the beginning, and I've never had a favorite. Sorry, there's no favorite website. There's no favorite surprise. There have been a lot of surprises. I suppose some of them have been when somebody has said, actually, I wouldn't be alive without the web, because otherwise, I did all my medical diagnostics actually using the web. Or people who said a family member wouldn't be fine. Quite a few people have said, we wouldn't be a unit, or we wouldn't be passionately enough if it wasn't for the web. And so I think I will save maybe when people say we've managed to achieve global peace and harmony and have nations talking to nations without weapons, then I'll say, okay, then you could put my favorite mark on that one. Well, we're looking at a picture of the computer now, again, with that great wording on it about do not power down. Looking back at that time, when you created the code, the decision to give the code away for free, is that a regret? Absolutely not. Because if it had been for pay, they wouldn't have taken off. We wouldn't be talking about it now. There would have been lots of, if I'd have introduced it and said, okay, this is the World Wide Web, you pay me 0.0000 cents a click, or 0.00 cents a link or something, then people would have immediately made a whole lot of different competing incompatible ones. I was asking a massive ask of everybody on the planet. I was saying, you've all got to give every document you have, you've got to give it a name which starts with HTTP. You've got to take whatever name you've got and you've got to stick HTTP and your organization name in front of it. And you've got to run a program to make that reality. And so that is a huge ask, making everybody fit in with this naming system. Everybody used, they didn't all have, there were other protocols as part of HTTP, but mainly meant accepting HTTP. There were other formats apart from HTML, but mainly it meant accepting HTML. You can't ask all that and also say you're going to charge. Okay. Do you have any regrets about the World Wide Web that you could turn the clock back and have done something differently? But more recently, that's obviously a fairly frequently asked question. And the joking one is I could have left off the slash, and it would work just as well. And you were so much typing, and to a certain extent, but the slash actually was a good idea at the time. And the slash, because it was used by the Apollo domain distributed file system, meant that all the people who understood that system could come on board. So there was a reason for it. But I think actually, so after the slash and before the next slash, then goes, after most of it is all about the name of a document on the server but then there is the name of the server. And for that, I picked the domain names. And the domain names at the time were managed in a very responsible fashion. They were started off managed by John Postel, who was just a benevolent dictator who made sure that the domain name service was run responsibly. And if you needed a domain name, you could get one, and they were dished out. And then the domain name system and the US government gave it to various companies
to turn it into a business. And the management of the domain name system was managed by all these companies who were making gazillions of dollars out of it. And they were making a gazillion dollars by writing programs that guess what you, the entrepreneur, were going to invent, finding the domain name, and then grabbing it, and then waiting for you to come along, see how good your idea was, and then flogging it back to you for millions, well, for typically thousands of dollars. So huge drain on innovation. The fact you can't just think of take a domain name that hasn't been used. The fact that suddenly they all got gobbled up by speculators was, I think, a bad decision. I think that the domain name, the Americans were very, very keen on everything being commercial, everything being run by market forces. But if you have to have one centralized piece of the system, and the domain name is a centralized piece of the system, if in your system, designers out there, it's going to be centralized, it has to be run in the public interest by a very, very squeaky clean body, which is elected, with elected officials and so on, and it should be run to be able, and it should have given out, or continue giving out domain names to those who deserve them for free. So, just saying, domain naming system. There are lots of people looking at how we can improve on the way that the DNS works and build much cheaper systems and so on now.
Many people feel anxious, they feel helpless about the abuses of the online world, not just by big tech firms. You've written today about your concerns about some of them. What would you say to people who do feel anxious and crucially do feel helpless? They feel it's in the hands of tech companies and no one is really doing anything about it.
Well, talk to family members about it who might have different solutions, because they find the people, your friends and family, who may have the same solutions, and find out whether they use the same websites and so on. For example, disclaimer, I'm an advisor to a company called MeWe, mewe.com. If you go to mewe.com, it's a social network. You can share photographs with people, you can have a discussion, you can share your calendar, you can share files, and you can collaborate. So you can do some of the things you could do on the big social networking platforms, but MeWe is one of the companies where they have a privacy bill of rights. So you don't, in fact, so if you use MeWe, actually they don't do anything with your data at all. They respect your data. Why not? So every time there's a crisis out there of privacy, a whole bunch of people join MeWe. Down the road, hopefully we'll have the Solid project, hopefully will give you all kinds of new ways in which you can find people who will store your data that you trust. There will be people, the Solid project, compatible servers will give you complete control over who accesses your data. It's not ready yet. Do contact me if you're a developer, but not if you're a user, because we need help getting the open source stuff on. So yeah, there will be, down the road, there will be more and more solutions, but right now, partly, you can choose. You don't have to all use the same social network. If you're not sure about what goes on, if you feel that your social network is too opaque and you don't really understand what's going on, then call for social networks to be less opaque. The Web Foundation is calling for the algorithms which determine what you fed as news. Obviously, as you pick up a news feed, there you are. Suddenly, your view of the world is being dictated by an algorithm. So, what's wrong with this picture? Obviously, you should be able to go to the person who runs that algorithm and ask them to cough up. Tell them, okay, what determines what I see, what news I see in the morning? Because actually, that kind of determines where I vote, what I study, and what all kinds of things about my life.
Are you worried about the end of net neutrality in the United States?
I'm a bit worried about the end of neutrality in the United States. If you think this country is politically is just in a ridiculous situation, well, the United States is in a pretty ridiculous situation in some ways as well. And so, with both houses sort of locked against each other, and Congress locked against the president, and the president of the United States decided that he would deliberately put in a chairman of the Federal Communications commission who would roll back net neutrality laws. There's been a huge amount of challenge to that. To a certain extent, internet service providers who actually really violate net neutrality by slowing down, deliberately slowing down packets going to particular political parties or particular commercial customers or commercial partners, obviously will get in a huge amount of trouble. So to a certain extent, if people really violate it in a bad way, the public will get mad and they will vote with their feet. But so I guess I'm worried about it. I'm sort of shocked at the fact that now we were just in Washington again, talking to people who are going to help fight back about this. Now the Congress is now pushing back against the president, and they've just introduced a bill which will probably go through Congress, but won't necessarily go through the Senate. The battle is raging as ever. The battle always will rage. Anytime you come to a meeting like this and somebody says, "Well, we're done. The web is safe." No. So turn around.
Okay.
Somebody will be attacking it.
Another question from someone out there. This is Ma. Where do you see the web in 30 years from now?
It's not, I think, for us to try to guess. Partly because look at what's happened over the last 30 years. The web has changed really dramatically. And a lot of that we couldn't have predicted. Even some of the wonderful things, I wouldn't have predicted that Wikipedia would have been such a wonderful success. We have things, we had things like great blogs, and I couldn't have predicted some of the nasty things. Would we have predicted? I think a lot of people did predict the consolidation because they predicted that when you have a lot of players out there in a flat, open market like that, then the biggest ones will grow bigger, and there you will end up with just one. So people did predict that. But most of it is really, really hard to predict. And so to try and predict what's going on is, in a way, a fool's errand. But what we can do, and is much more, is we can say what web we want. So we want a web which is open. We want a web which is free, which is royalty-free. We want a web which is discrimination-free. So when you look at the contract for the web, that's about asking the question, getting involved in those discussions and asking about what sort of web do we want. If you are, maybe you use accessibility features, maybe those are important to you. Maybe you don't speak English, the fact that there's a web which isn't all English is important to you. So we need to discuss what sort of web we want. And I think some of it, I would like it to be like today's web with a lot of things fixed, and also I'd like it to be one where we not only have things like Wikipedia and great blogs which have which bring you pretty good quality information. I also think I like to see websites where people in 30 years' time have great political discussions because somebody has found a way to build a website which is a great debate place. And you end up with a set of places to go. So whenever you go down the pub and have a discussion, then you go onto the pub screen wall and you invoke these apps where you can have a civilized discussion, and you go for it. And the thing immediately pulls out some of your untruths. You slipped into conversation, you lose, they go, and you end up having a great, settling the argument, figuring out how to run the country, figuring out how to run the world.
We needed this in Britain 2 years ago.
Yeah, we did. Actually, yeah, we also did not need Article 50, because I think Article 50 was really bad design. Just talking about protocol designs, one of the things that might come out of, if you design a system where people could design political processes, then hopefully they would not have come up with Article 50. If you look at the way Article 50 was produced, it was deliberately done in order to make British people look stupid. Okay, what's wrong with this picture? So Yeah,
It's such a shame that Theresa May wasn't at number 10 when you went for that meeting today.
Where was she?
I think she might have been in Parliament.
Busy?
Yes,
Oh,
possibly.
busy.
Right, I've got time for one more question. Did you ever imagine, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, that there would ever be so many cat videos on the web?
Actually, I've never told anybody this, but that was the plan all along. Call me out, call me.
I think we might be at that point in the evening where we need to take a selfie. And I think we might. But I should say, first of all, thank you so much, Tim Berners-Lee, and thank you to everyone who sent in questions. So thank you.
Thanks for the questions. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Samira, Tim, Sir Tim, thank you from all of us here at the Science Museum in London. Thank you so much. I can see the phones are already there. I've brought my phone. I just want to say congratulations to Sir Tim on 30 years of the World Wide Web. Here's to the next 30 and beyond. Hopefully it's left all of you here in the audience feeling inspired, energized and ready for action. So make sure you do go online and visit webfoundation.org to find out more about the fight for the web. If you don't mind, you in the audience, if we can take a quick selfie, if you don't mind about that, with the invention of the World Wide Web.
This is a selfie for everyone. All right. So if you don't want to be in it, you'll have to contact the Science Museum afterwards and
we're going to go
get
into
your
the middle.
pixels removed.
So if you could smile, look impressed. We've got some backup.
All right. Now,
here we go.
This is where we can see who's taken too many selfies in their life.
Right. I'm going to do the room. Get the balcony.
Yeah, you need to get everybody at the back as well. Yeah. There you go. Tricky, isn't it?
Right.
Yes.
We can
You've taken too many selfies.
I have taken too many selfies. Guilty.
So if you want to take a selfie with us, with Sir Tim, you can all...
You have
absolutely. Everyone
10
here in the
seconds
audience, if you can't
to do
hear,
it starting now.
You've been a very good audience.
I
You've
will
been on
turn
your
around
phones
for
for the
up there
best
as
part of an
well.
hour.
Right. Whose idea was
So we're
this?
going to
Silly
photobomb your selfie.
All right. Yes. All right.
I think we need to look up here as well. Let's do the room.
Right.
Right, let's just do that one first. Right. This is your chance.
Let's do a wave.
Okay.
You ready? We're going to look around this way. We're going to
do a wave.
We're going to do a wave of looking around the room for the selfies.
Right.
All right.
And then you do the main event. I'll stand over here.
A balcony wave.
Balcony. Hey, balcony. If you want selfies, you have to turn around and be in it. That's how it works. I have taken a few too many in my time.
Instructions on the Science will be on the Science Museum website tomorrow.
Oh, God.
For those who...
Well, I'll let you
All right.
take as many selfies with Sir Tim photobombing as you like, but for now, that is just about all we have time for tonight. Before we bring the curtain down, there's just enough time to do a huge thank you to all of our speakers tonight. Imogen Heap, Roya Mahboob, Taylor Wilson, Matt Britton, Dr. Anne-Marie Imafidon MBE, Sadiq Khan, Samira Ahmed, and of course, Sir Tim Berners-Lee. So thank you very much for the 2,000 of you joining us here at the Science Museum in London tonight, and to everyone watching around the world, thank you and good night.